you always live life to the beat of your own drum. You always have interesting takes. You're raising a young kid now, I think.
That's right.
Is there something? Do you have a philosophy on child rearing that you think would be different to the mainstream thinking? And I always feel like you have innovative ideas around things like this.
So I plan on keeping him out of the institutional education system to the best of my ability. And whether that's homeschooling.
You were homeschooled.
Or I was. Yeah. Whether it's homeschooling or none schooling or some, weird bizarro AI aided, creche. I don't know what it's going to look like. The next few years are going to tell. But I do know that I probably am not going to put him in the institutional education system.
Just because you think it's...
So I have very negative opinions of it, but I'd say even if you don't have negative opinions, it's not hard to buy into the idea that with nearly unlimited wealth, you can do somewhat better than the traditional education system. Like imagine if you couldn't. Imagine if there's nothing that could be better than the thing that happens to exist and be sustained by the local unionized teachers movement than your local school. I want to have good schools. I'm not saying that we should not have schools. It's just
I'm with you.
I can't imagine that that's the very best thing for every kid, mine included.
Yeah.
A few other things. I'm gonna try to have him walking long distances as soon as possible. I think it's good for independence. My dad, when I was 2 years old, let me walk 4 miles to 7-Eleven and buy a Diet Coke. Following behind at a distance.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't even talk at that point in my life. But kids can walk a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
If you train them to do it. I'm still figuring this out, so we'll see how this goes. But I feel like people ignore the biological imperatives that come along with being a person. And we try to jam people into this extended adolescence where it's not just that you are still treated like a child, it's that someone else is in control of your life. And I think that drives a lot of really unnecessary conflict. It used to be that when you got old enough to go out and make something yourself and find a mate, that you would naturally go and do so. And now we've created a situation where, I'll just jump to what I'm going to do. The moment that my kid believes that he knows better than I do, I think it's probably the right time for him to see what the real world is like. If you're 16, 17 years old and you think you've got it all figured out, why am I going to keep you locked up in the house for another 2 years telling you how you're going to live your life? If I have not raised a kid who can make their own decisions by then, damn, it's probably just too late.
So you have to forcibly evict them when that moment comes?
I don't want to forcibly evict them. I'm hoping it's natural. I'm hoping that they say, screw you, Dad. You don't know what things are like now. You're an old out of touch dude who has too much money to know how the real world works. And they'll say, you know what? We could butt heads for the next 2 years living under the same roof, or I could enable you with a small amount of financial help to go out into the real world and find out just how right you are. And if he turns out he's right and he's got it all figured out, hell yeah, power to him. And I think otherwise, we'd probably actually have a better relationship in the long run than if I had, beat on him and kept him in the house. And also, you send kids to college and you're beating on them to stay in college. I mean, we're not talking about 2 years of this. We're talking about 5, 6, 7 years or more of a subservient parent-child relationship where you're expected to be keeping your thumb on what is a fully grown, sexually mature adult, really. And so I'm that's what I'm hoping. And then maybe this is just due to my unique circumstances. I'm hoping that my son figures out who he's going to marry when he's 15, 16, 17. That worked for a really long time. I don't think figuring it out in your 20s or 30s or 40s is even remotely optimal for life. Now, my personal story is I've been dating my wife since I was 15 years old. We met at debate camp, started dating. We're still together and we're married now. We've been married for a decade.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, but your situation is so unique. I mean, how can you possibly know if they're the right person? And my answer to them is, well, it seemed to work pretty well for basically the entirety of human civilization. They say, oh, but men used to treat women poorly. It's like, look, these are independent issues. This idea that getting married young, or at least having the intention to, like, I'm not saying that my son needs to get married when he's 16, but this idea that it's unthinkable that you get married until you're in 30s, it is a very unnatural and modern thing. And I think that it leads to a prolonged adolescence. It leads to you not thinking about what's important in life. It leads to you spending a big chunk of your most productive years probably not aligned correctly with what you were biologically designed to do. So that's my controversial opinion. I'm gonna hope that I can find a nice girl for my son before he can drive.
Well, I met my wife at 19, still love her, and
isn't
we're
it
still
great?
going. Yeah, 20
And the thing is,
years.
and when you meet when you're young, the nice thing is you get to grow together. You get to be the people who are the right person for the other side. And I'm not putting people down who get married in their 30s or 40s, but from what I've seen of my own situation versus those of my friends, it is a lot easier to meet someone who's perfect for you when you grow into that together than when you try to find somebody who's gone through 30 or 40 years of their own life and hope that their life has turned them into exactly the type of person that you want to be with for the rest of yours. It's just that's a really lucky dice you need to roll.